Okay, we'll just crop the
Yeah,
video.
I'll crop the video.
Okay, ready, set, go. Did you know that 75% of employers said that teamwork and collaboration is much more beneficial compared to individual work?
And in order to work as a teamwork and in order to be in a collaboration, you need to understand each other's cultures. And for example, us, we all come from different backgrounds. Irish, I'm Scottish, Native American, and Haitian, but we all come together and form a team.
And which is why our topic is intercultural communications. Do you know what intercultural communication is? Have you ever wondered why intercultural communication is so important? Have you ever worried about being culturally insensitive?
Today, we're here to talk about the major bases of co-culture, the three perspectives of interculture, the dark side of interculture, and how to become interculturally competent.
There are many bases of co-culture, including gender, race, religion, and social class. Co-culture groups are groups of people who share similar interests or characteristics.
The first co-culture we're going to be talking about is gender. Gender is considered a different co-culture because each gender has different biological and social differences, and each gender acts differently. For example, what we talked about in class is men and women communicate very differently. Women tend to be more emotional, tend to talk about their feelings more, while men are more closed off and less in touch with their emotions, for example. So that is why gender is considered a co-culture.
Race is the next co-culture, so racial stereotypes and expectations can impact the way that we communicate and understand others, according to UBC research. People who take part in communicating with others of different races should understand how to best communicate with them in a respectful way. The reason for this is that if you are in a workplace setting with someone of a different race or ethnicity, they may have different views on the way people act, and some individuals might identify or self-identify with ethnicities in complex or even contradictory ways that you may not understand. The best way to have a good line of communication with someone of a different race or ethnicity is to be respectful.
So religion. Religion is a system of beliefs, rituals, and ethics shared by a group based on a common perception of the sacred or holy. According to ussagepub.com, religion is the oldest source of human identity, and religion can affect all elements of life. For example, the Hindu writes from left to right, prays to the rising sun, and keeps a mustache. The Muslims write from right to left, faces the setting sun, and praying, and always shaves the upper lip. This shows that different religions and different cultures have their own way, but have similar ways of practicing it.
Lastly is social class. Social class is a division of a society based on social and economic status. According to the psychologicalscience.org, people from lower class have fundamentally different ways of thinking about the world than people in upper class. People from a lower class background tend to depend more on others, and because of this, lower class people are better at understanding other people's emotions, while people from an upper class background don't really need to rely on others and aren't able to read others' emotions and tend to hoard resources and be less generous than they could be.
Now that we know about a few different co-cultures and the different elements of co-cultures, now we're going to get into the three perspectives of intercultural communication.
Different perspectives reveal the differences in what defines aspects of diverse cultures.
The first perspective is the social scientific perspective. It is the most traditional approach to intercultural communication, and it originated after World War II when the US diplomats were heavily criticized because they didn't know anything about the culture or the language of the countries that they were assigned to. The social scientific perspective focuses on a lot of data and statistics versus the other perspectives are less on that. And so it is a reliable approach when you're trying to become more interculturally competent. It focuses on quantitative methods and seeks to describe and predict behavior.
The second one is interpretative perspective. This perspective focuses more on the understanding of people's experiences. Interperspective encompasses social theories and perspectives that embrace a view of reality as socially constructed or made meaningful thoughts actors' understanding of events. In organizational communication, scholars focus on the complexities of meaning as an enact in symbols, language, and social interactions. Also, interpretative theory applies to all political studies. One of the main ideas behind interpretative perspective is that it concerns and values understanding the world as it is from subjective experiences from individuals.
The critical perspective views reality as subjective and focuses on the importance of studying the context in which communication occurs. It also defines that organizations are locations of domination with power and control as central. Also, based on the idea that power is distributed unequally, this approach is focused more on a traditional hierarchy which has several levels of power. For example, white privilege. According to learningforjustice.org, if white business leaders didn't hire many people of color, white people had more economic opportunities. Having the ability to maintain that power dynamic in itself was a white privilege, and it endures. Legislative bodies, corporative leaders, and educators are still disproportionately white and often make conscious choices like laws, hiring practices, discipline procedures that keeps the cycle on repeat.
Now that we know the three perspectives of intercultural communication, we can get into Hofted's 4 dimensions of culture.
Understanding the dimensions of culture will help you navigate conversations and influence how you respond to difficult situations. Firstly is individualism versus collectivism. Individualism, firstly, is an example of individuals putting themselves over the group. They think it's important to value their dependence, and their personality comes from themselves versus their perception, like other people's perceptions of them. According to the Chapter 8 PowerPoint, individualists are more competitive and focus on self-autonomy. Then there's collectivist, which accept that their group is greater than their individuals. They focus their personalities entirely on their relationships with others and how well their relationships with others are. They tend to say things to avoid conflict, and they just overall value the group more than the individuals.
The next is uncertainty avoidances. This describes how different cultures and societies react and tolerate uncertainties. According to the blog Communicated, negotiations tend to achieve more alignment within culture interactions compared to cross-culture interactions, and the use of formal languages and messages that emphasize law and regulations when interacting with perpetrators high on uncertainty avoidances helps to better align communication across cultures.
Power distance. This is the extent to which the lower-ranking individuals in society accept and expect that power is distributed unequally. According to the ArticulatedCEO.com, if someone from a low power distance country has to deal with someone in a high power distance culture, nothing is going to happen without the bosses say so.
And lastly, we have masculinity versus femininity. Masculinity is seen to be the trait which emphasizes ambition, acquisition of wealth, and differentiated gender roles, while femininity is seen to be the trait which stresses caring and nurturing behaviors, sexuality, equality, and environmental awareness, and more fluid gender roles.
After learning about the dimensions of culture, which will help you navigate conversation, next we will understand the dark sides of intercultural communication.
Dark side of intercultural communication is the communication that results in negative outcomes.
Firstly, we have stereotypes. Now, stereotypes are very common. I'm sure everybody hears them very often. And they assume that cultural groups share certain characteristics, and it's not based on data at all. It is based solely on personal perception. An example of this is that men are greater than women, or that blondes are unintelligent. Those are common ones. And according to Simply Psychology, a disadvantage of stereotyping is that it makes us ignore differences between different cultures, and this makes us think things that are not true.
Prejudice is a negative perception that one may hold about another culture group. This can be a liking or a disliking for one another, especially without a good reason. A study done by 2 university professors, Lauren Rivers and Andreas Tilsalk, showed that upper-class white males were much more likely to be called back for a job interview by a law firm than equally as qualified white females.
Racism is the oppression and discrimination against people of color and other ethnic groups. In fact, racism not only a network of attitudes, beliefs, and convictions, it also refers to behaviors, practices, and actions. According to the Sentencing Project, police officers are more likely to stop black drivers than white drivers. Once pulled over, people of color are more likely than whites to be searched and are more likely than whites to be arrested.
And lastly, we have assuming similarity or differences. When you have no information about a new culture, it makes sense to assume that there's no differences. According to graduateaway.com, a Danish woman left her baby in a stroller outside a restaurant in New York. While she was inside, later she was charged for endangering her child, but the woman said that leaving children unattended outside cafes in Denmark is very common.
As stated in the book Communication Well by Robert McDougall, ethnocentrism refers to the notion that one's own culture, patterns, beliefs, and values are normal to any other. For example, throughout Asia, the way of eating is to use chopsticks with every meal. These people may find it unnecessary to find that people in other societies, such as the American society, eat using forks, spoons, and knives. Now that we understand the dark side of intercultural communication, wouldn't you like to know about the benefits of becoming interculturally competent? So how to be competent? According to Monash University, intercultural competence is the ability to function effectively across cultures, to think and act appropriately, to communicate and work with people from different cultural backgrounds at home or abroad.
Firstly, a benefit of becoming culturally competent is self-awareness. Self-awareness is becoming aware of your own characters, motives, and desires. According to a study by Harvard Business Review, there are 2 kinds of self-awareness. Firstly is internal self-awareness. Internal self-awareness represents how clearly we see our own values, passions, and ambitions. It also defines our feelings of our strengths and our weaknesses. Versus external self-confidence and self-awareness. External is how other people see us. And research shows that people who are more aware of how other people see us are more empathetic and better at taking people's perspectives, which is a good quality to have. And it's important to have a good balance of both internal and external self-awareness when you are dealing with intercultural communication.
Next, we have attitude and the way you perceive yourself to others. Attitude is the curiosity and openness towards other cultures. According to Intercultural Learning in the Classroom, Cross Borders by Karen Hopgood, this also involves a willingness to question assumptions and previous knowledge about other cultures as well as our own.
Knowledge. According to acc.org, the intercultural knowledge and competence rubric suggests as a systematic way to measure our capacity to identify our own culture patterns, compare and contrast them with others, and adapt empathetically and flexible to unfamiliar ways of being. Examples are learning about the difference in people's types of behaviors, politeness, manners, language, differences in religion, values, and attitudes.
And lastly, we have skills. According to BritishCouncil.org, intercultural skills are the abilities to understand different cultures, contexts, and viewpoints. For example, being aware and working at controlling your own biases which could affect others, being aware of a person's own culture, values, and biases.
Now that we have a clear understanding of what intercultural communication is and the major basis of co-culture, the 3 perspectives of intercultural communication, dimensions of culture, the dark side of intercultural communication, and how to become interculturally competent, now you all do as well.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Men hate each other because they fear each other, and they fear each other because they don't know each other, and they don't know each other because they are often separated from each other."
Now that we understand intercultural communication and the different levels of it and how you can become more interculturally competent, I encourage you all to become more aware of the cultures around you. I encourage you all to focus on the dark sides that we talked about and avoid the obvious ones. Avoid stereotyping others, avoid racism, and avoid all of those components, because it's important when you are communicating with other cultures to understand the cultures around you so you can work as a team and in collaboration. And now we have a video skit to show you of the different greetings from around different cultures, because we have to understand that not everyone greets each other the same way, and certain greetings from some cultures might be offensive in others.